You're keeping us alive now. You forget about that one. And you keep them coming in. You're doing well, son.
Find us on the web at mbradio.us.
I want to make it clear that the views expressed by our hosts are not considered the official stance of MBR Views. Remember, this is all about having fun and enjoying the ride.
Welcome to the show. Everyone's expecting. If you know them well, you know. Do as I say, not as I do. Welcome, friends, you know. Unity in all that
Hey, welcome everybody to Drunk Dudes in a Gun Room, brought to you by Operation Encore. They are a 501c nonprofit that is helping veterans transition into a music career. They are doing amazing things, and they are helping and training veterans every day. So you can go to operationencore.org, check them out, follow their Facebook page, and maybe if you can help them, hit a little donate button and give them some love. Also, this show is brought to you by Gunroom radio station that plays nothing but veteran and veteran dependents music, 100%. Here's a quick taste.
You are not alone. There are so many. It's a mortar attack. Small on fire and RPGs. We don't. He was sitting in the shadows with a gun in his hand and a lifetime of. I know you can remember when all the shows turned off at 12 a.m.
Hey, we have got an awesome guest today, man. I've been talking to this gentleman for quite some time now, and I'm excited to bring him out. His name is Jack Blaise. He is a military veteran, dual military, went from the Army into Marines, and is continuing to serve with the fire department. And he is also a musician, man. I don't know where this guy finds the time, but let's bring him on and find out. What's going on, man?
Hey, good evening, Donald. Apparently, you really don't know me all that well. You wouldn't call me a gentleman. That's
Well, you know, I'm trying to make a good impression on everybody else, man. We don't say backstage stuff.
Don't ever let the truth get in the way of a good story, right?
Absolutely, man.
That's
So
what
how
we say
you
as
been?
songwriters.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. Everything going good for you, man?
Oh, I'm doing pretty good here. I'm I did my podcast show this morning. I've got a whole bunch of stuff happening with our nonprofit here, Soldier Songs and Voices, which you mentioned Operation Encore. It's awesome to see the work that they do. One of my close associates with Soldier Songs is also an Operation Encore artist, John Evans.
Okay.
And we're going to get you some music of his to put on here too.
Absolutely, man.
He's
We'd love
actually
it.
in the studio right now. So
That's awesome, man. Yeah,
We got
we'd love it. So why don't you give everybody a little taste of where you came from and where you grew up and what brought you to the military, man?
Sure, yeah. Well, there's a pretty strong military tradition in my father's side of the family. My grandfather got his mom to sign permission for him to go into World War II at 17. He
Okay.
was only in the Navy for about 3 or 4 months and ended up a kamikaze hit his gun tub in the Battle of the Philippines, and they actually, everybody else in the gun tub died. 200 other people were killed, and so they actually threw him on top of the pile of bodies because they didn't think he was going to survive because he had a sucking chest wound.
Oh,
And
wow.
he managed to survive though, and he became a drunk old bastard after that, because they didn't have the kind of resources we have now,
No,
and
no, they
but
didn't.
but then my father was Vietnam era. He was in the Army for 8 years, and so I grew up for the first 6 years of my life. I was an Army brat
Okay.
and moved all over the place, and then my parents are from Houston. So then once he got out of the Army, we went back to Houston for a very short amount of time. And then we moved out in the middle of frickin' nowhere in Texas, a little town called Yoakum, Texas.
Okay.
I think it had 1,100 people there when I was there. And actually, that was the closest town. We actually lived out between towns, but
Yeah,
Yoakum was 20 minutes away, and that's where we would go for groceries. So, but
that's
yeah,
the best
so.
way to live, man.
Right. And like we were just talking about off camera, my fun, my entertainment in those days, this is, the early 80s, mid 80s, was, running around in the fields with my BB gun, shooting stuff. And
Absolutely, man.
so that was always interesting thing. So, it was kind of funny when I got into the Army, they tried to change the way I shoot because I'm right-handed but left eye dominant. But I'd been
Oh
shooting so long,
yeah.
just closing my left eye, and I listened to him for about 3 minutes and then went, yeah, that's not gonna work, and just you know
I think we had a few that was like that as well in my basic training class. I remember a few guys that it just looked odd the way they were trying. They're trying to shoot with like both eyes open and shit.
yeah,
Yeah, it was crazy.
I've never been able to shoot a rifle with both eyes open. I've finally trained myself. For a while, uh, about 15 years ago, I was shooting IPSC,
Mhm.
or USPSA actually, which, if you don't, for those people that don't know what that is, that's kind of the you run around through an obstacle course while
Right.
shooting targets with a pistol, and try to make it as fast and accurate as possible. And that was absolutely a blast. But you want to talk about an expensive hobby? Good Lord,
Yes,
man, that
it
is
is.
just that makes golf look like a super cheap hobby.
Yeah.
It's
There,
amazing.
there's some guys around here that are really big into the 22. What's it called? 22. I don't know. It's called 22 rifle tournament or something. Association is what it's called.
Okay,
Guys, yeah, man, they go. Their target that they hit is just. I mean, the whole target is the size of a dime.
right.
25 yards away, and you got 25 targets, 25 rounds, and man, it's just some of the mounts that they said that they spend on their gun. You could buy some big ass guns for that same price, and
Right.
they're putting that into a 22.
Or cars. I
Yeah,
mean, honestly.
yeah, you are right,
Yeah.
man.
So yeah, so I grew up, running around in the pastures and in the woods and stuff, shooting stuff. And then we moved to Houston right before I started high school.
hmm
And so I did high school in Houston, which was kind of a culture shock for me, coming from a little tiny town, But
I bet.
that was interesting. And then I actually, when I got out of high school, the recruiters are calling you and that, and I was like, no, fuck off. There's no way you'll never see me in a uniform. To hell with that. And but after about a year of junior college and really having no direction, and just really didn't have a whole lot else going on, I
Yeah.
thought, well, I'll join the military. I'll join the Army and get some money for college and all that good stuff. And part of what the motivation was I wanted to go to the Art Institute of Houston to learn how to produce music.
Okay.
And I didn't have the cash to do it. And it's honestly, looking back, my parents were absolutely right. But they were like, hell no, we're not paying for you to go to this school. This school is a complete scam, and but they took the GI Bill. So I went to the Army for 3 years. This was in 1993.
hmm
And I initially, I wanted to do all the high speed stuff, man. I had the Ranger option on my contract and all that stuff, and so I went into MEPS, and they were like, "Oh, you're colorblind. You can't do that." And I was like, "What the hell does color vision have to do with jumping out of planes and shooting?" I mean, And they were like, well, you might not be able to use NVGs or something. I don't remember what all the bullshit excuses were, but they were like, yeah, that's it. And, looking back now, this was like in June. And so I realized the big thing was it was the end of the, recruitment cycle. So they didn't have a whole lot of slots left to fill. But
Yeah.
my choices went immediately from basically any job I wanted, because I did really well on the ASVAB, to 3 jobs. And they said I could be a laundry bath specialist, a chaplain's assistant, or a small arms repairman. And they convinced me that if I was a small arms repairman, that I could still, have no problem getting into all the high-speed units and all that, which was complete bullshit. I mean,
Yeah.
it's a third shop support position,
Yep.
so, but anyway, it was funny. So they actually told me, yeah. So when you get to boot camp, this is a great boot camp story. They said, when you get to boot camp, just go into your drill sergeant's office and tell them that you want to volunteer for jump school, and they'll take care of you. And yeah, you can imagine how that went, right?
Oh yeah,
So,
they helped you jump, didn't they?
yeah, they helped me bounce off a few walls, that's for sure. But yeah, so for 3 years I was on Fort Lewis, and which it was kind of interesting. I did get to, we supported first group up there, first SF group, and we all the, they have their own armorers, but an armor is a unit level, and so anytime they had
Right.
something wrong, they would bring it to us. So we got to see all kinds of cool shit, Johnson machine guns from World War One, and
Oh
water
yeah.
cooled machine guns, and just all this amazing stuff, and one time I was in the arms room with this guy, and they had a I forget what kind of sniper rifle it was, but it had the big muzzle brake on it, and the stock and the barrel had been spiraled out and was being held together by the muzzle brake and the receiver.
Oh shit.
And I was like, oh shit, that was bad. How's the dude that shot it? And the armor goes, oh, I'm fine. And I was like, oh, okay. And he's like, yeah, that happened yesterday. I had a pop, no kick, and didn't recognize it. And I was like, well, shit. That'll get you attention. That'll wake you up like a cold cup of coffee, right?
Hell yeah, it would. Holy crap. Man.
Yeah, but that was interesting because supporting those guys, there's a deal where every so often your weapons have to be inspected, or you can't deploy with them. You can't take them to the range or anything. And so we would have to go in and inspect everybody's weapons on the base. But those SF guys, man, they'd call us at like 3:00 in the morning. Hey, we got a team leaving in an hour to go wherever, and our weapons are overdue for inspection. I need you to come in right now. And it was like, fuck. But they took really good care of us. I mean, we had, because back in the 90s, you came in just a little after that, right? Like 94, 95, somewhere in there?
94. Yep.
94. Okay.
Yep.
So you remember that it was, I mean, you had to beg, borrow, and steal for any kind of supplies. They were rolling back, cutting back everything expense wise. But because we took such good care of the SF guys, they always took good care of us. And so we had all the chem lights and all the cool toys that they always had just excess laying around,
Yeah.
And so that was fun. But anyway, I have a tendency to ramble sometimes.
Oh, you're good, man. Yeah, their budget tends to be pretty damn high.
Yeah. And the one thing that I noticed was that anytime they went to the field, it was always TDY. And when we went to the field, it was like, oh yeah, you don't need your separate rats anymore because, you're getting MREs in the field now. So to hell with your wife. She can figure out what the hell she's going to eat later,
Yep, absolutely,
And
man.
that was some BS.
Yep. And half the times, those guys, when they went to the field, man, they stayed in a hotel,
Right.
And then they went out and trained and came back to the hotel at the end of the night.
Right. Yeah. That was some shit. But so after 3 years of sitting behind a bench, I went in for my first re-up counseling, and I guess must have been 96 already, but they were like, oh man, first termer, you're gonna get whatever you want, right? And I was like, oh, cool. Right, absolute bullshit lie. But I got to give him credit because he was honest with me on something else, which I'll get to in a second. But he was like, so what do you want to do? I was like, oh, well, dude, I hate sitting behind a desk. Let me change my MOS. And he's like, well, your MOS is shortage, man. We can't really let you out of it. And I was like, okay, well, then that means I should get a bonus, right? I mean, if it's shortage MOS. He's like, well, it's not really that shortage, and And remember, this was in the time when there were they were paying guys to get out. If you were an E4 what, like 10 years. They
Yeah.
just wrote you a check and said, have a nice life.
Yeah, they called it RCP.
Right. That's what it was. And so I was like, okay, well then, then I want to go to Germany. I've always, one of the reasons I enlisted in the army was to jump out of planes and live in frickin' Germany, so if I can't do one, at least let me go to Germany. And they're like, oh yeah, we can definitely make that happen, man. But I gotta be completely honest with you, which I appreciated, honestly. But he goes, I can't actually guarantee Germany. All I can guarantee is European theater, which includes Turkey and Saudi Arabia and Kuwait. And I was like, yeah, I'm not signing another 4-year hitch on a maybe,
Yeah, no shit, man.
And
I mean, Turkey's not bad. I've known some people that went there and they rather enjoyed that. But
yeah. Well, and I
shit?
right. And I'd gotten married like not too long before that. And I was like, all these places you're listing are unaccompanied tours. So I'd have to be leaving my new wife here,
Yeah.
And so I was like, well, what the fuck are you offering me then? What is all this? I'm gonna get whatever I want bullshit, And he goes, well, you could go to Korea or you could stay right here and use the college option. And I was like, or I could go the fuck back to Texas and go to college,
Yeah.
So I left. I actually considered staying in the Seattle area just because it's beautiful up there, man. I loved it.
Yeah.
I really loved it. You drive through the mountains to get to the beach. You drive up to the trailhead, walk up in the mountains, don't see anybody for a week at a time if you want to, and that's just that was a great place to live. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
So I got home back to Houston and actually was selling golf clubs at a golf sporting store and going to school, just junior college type stuff. And I was feeling that pull to go back in, and my wife got pregnant, and that was kind of like the push I needed,
Yep.
And I went down and talked to the Army recruiter, and he says, well, if we even let you back in, well, you'll have to go right back into your old MOS. And I was like, yeah, that's not going to happen. So, and it sounds like I'm dogging on my old MOS. It was a fine job. I mean, and there was a lot of people who honestly probably would have killed for it. Instead of sleeping in foxholes or wherever, we were in GP mediums. We had generators. Our field time was, we all sat in the back of a Connex truck playing Nintendo, playing Mortal Kombat and those things back then, watching movies, all that good stuff. But so in a lot of ways, it was good duty. It really was. But it just wasn't what I wanted to do, So I went down and talked to the Marines because I'd always been kind of had that gung-ho mentality, which is why I wanted to do all the high-speed shit, But my father and my grandfather and everybody in my family was like, oh, you can't join the Marines. Those fuckers are crazy, and it's a cult and all this stuff.
It's a cult.
Which, quite frankly, is pretty much true. I mean,
I mean, in a way, I've never heard anybody refer it to that as, but yeah. They are their own little secret society.
Yeah, we absolutely are. And so they were like, yeah, well, shit, man, we'll send you to infantry school. That's no problem, And so I signed up and I went to, this is how bad I wanted to be a Marine though, was they were like, but to let you into the Marine Corps, you have to give up 2 stripes. I had to go from E4 down to E2. And they were like, but of course you'll make it back in no time, right?
Right.
And while I didn't believe them, I was like, well, I still want to be a Marine, so I don't care about 2 stripes, And and they're like, oh yeah, and you also have to go back through boot camp. And I was like, okay, sure, I guess, why not, And so I shipped off to MCRD, and did the whole boot camp thing, and then went to SOI, and towards the end of SOI, which is School of Infantry for people that don't know, they had a recon in doc, which was apparently unheard of at that time, which, for our Army guys, that's kind of like having a SF selection, come down to your AIT and say, hey, you ever thought about being SF? Come on in and, take the tryout. And I was like, man, this is going to be awesome. But then the more I thought about it, my wife was then at that point like 8 months pregnant, and
yeah, that's bad timing.
Yeah, and I kept thinking back to, all the times that I got the calls at 4 a.m. to come in to help SF deploy, and how often I would go in and, somebody completely else was working in their armory because, um, those guys are just always on the move. And some days you show up for PT and, they just say, okay, well, load up. We're heading out now. And it's like, okay, you got 5 minutes to call your wife and tell her you're leaving kind of thing. Of course, you
Yep.
can't tell her where you're going. You can't tell her what you're doing.
Yep.
And, and I got thinking about it and I was like, wow, this is exactly what I came in for. That, the window for me to do that has closed. Like I am not a young, single person anymore.
Yeah.
I want to be there for my child. And I realized actually at that point that I didn't want to have anything to do at all with the military at all. So I was like, I went and told him, I said, I need to see the chaplain. I said, I need to get out of here. I'm not doing this anymore. And so I actually got an entry level separation from the Marine Corps after
Wow.
being in for however long, which was ridiculous because I didn't qualify for an entry level separation.
Right.
I'd already done a full hitch in the Army, I was prior service. So, and it's not like they didn't know that, but, and of course they tried to convince me, oh, well, you just don't like it here because it's training. And if you go to your unit, it'll be better and all this stuff. And I was like, you don't understand. I understand that if I don't get out here in training, that it is so much harder to get out once you get into your unit. And I said that, no, you're going to let me out here or,
Yeah.
and so I got out and I came home and, baby was born and then ended up divorcing the old lady anyways.
Oh
Because it
man.
was all kind of for nothing. But I mean, it really wasn't because, I was still, even though we got divorced, I was very active in my daughter's life and, and she's, full grown now and doing great. And, that's just a lot of stuff I would have missed if I
Absolutely.
mean,
Yeah.
so I don't regret it. I mean, I definitely have that feeling of, failing and letting down like the Marine Corps tradition and all those kinds of things. And,
Right.
for a long time, I wouldn't even like talk about my time in the Marine Corps because I was pretty embarrassed by all that, that
Oh yeah. I
I
can understand.
yeah, that I started but didn't finish basically, and especially because this was in '98 when I joined, so that would have carried me into 2002,
And you
which
would have been
means
gone.
absolutely, absolutely, and so that that's a special kind of guilt too of like, well, all these other guys went over and had to do the things that you signed up to do years ago, but then you pussed out kind of deal, and so
Uh,
it was a big guilt thing for a long time for me.
yeah, I can relate to that, man. I've talked to a lot of people that have that same guilt, and I know even saying, look, don't wish that upon yourself, because of the shit that you carry when you come back, if you come
Hmm.
back, and to wish that you were in harm's way may or may not even change the events that happen,
Right.
So,
A- And
but
that's another
I
thing,
do understand.
yeah. And that's another thing, as you look back at the war effort and everything, it's kind of like, I'm really glad I didn't go. I mean, I
Yeah,
really am 100%. I don't have any regrets about not deploying these
yeah,
days, other than, you know, I know that guys I served with did deploy and went over there and that kind of stuff. And so
yeah,
it's not so much about, the war and the mission and all that kinds of stuff. It's about the guys, just like
yeah.
any other thing with the military. It's always, we're all in the shit together.
No,
Yeah.
absolutely. And I when I first started, the deployments first started. Before we even went the first time, I remember asking our regimental commander, "Hey, when are we going to get our chance?" Now it
Mhm.
was 2003 at this point, or 2002. It was September when 9/11 happened, and we didn't deploy till our unit didn't deploy till February, I think it was, of 2002.
Mhm.
And so before that, I was, like, hey, when are we going to get our chance? And I still remember these words today because they were so true. He said, watch what you wish for because you just might get it.
Mhm.
And I remember towards the end saying, when is it somebody else's turn?
Yeah.
Because by this time I've already learned that the war was not what it was broadcasted to be. There
Right.
was other bullshit. And just like you said, at that point, my concern was only for the soldiers.
Mhm.
I don't even pick why we were over there. I don't even get into those conversations because the way I look at it is all of us over there had the same mission. We just wanted to go home.
Right.
You know.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And then yeah, so again after 9/11 happened, I've the guilt and the drawback in and all that stuff. I actually enlisted in the reserves for a little bit
Okay.
and Army reserves. And that was interesting because at that point I was my my promotion date to E4 because reserves they actually put restored my rank and everything.
Oh yeah.
And so my promotion date was 1994 or whatever. So I was the old head guy,
Yeah.
and that was really an interesting experience. But I hated the reserves. I hated it because
Yep.
they talk about all the mission and everything they're going to be doing, and it's just you show up and you smoke cigarettes until it's time to go home, and that's what you do for drill weekends. I mean,
Yep.
it was just terrible, terrible.
Yep.
So
I hate.
while I was in
I
the
did a little bit too. I hated it.
yeah, while I was in the reserves, I applied for the Houston Fire Department. At the time, I was just bartending, other than my reserve time. So I was working in nightclubs and bars, and to be completely honest, that was the most fun I had. That was when I was the happiest in my life, was when I was working as a bartender, because
Oh, I bet.
it's just a fun environment to be in. And it may not be the healthiest environment, but I had a blast.
Yeah,
And
I bet, man.
yeah, we won't get into those stories on the air though. But
I know if I owned a bar, man, it would go bankrupt because I would end up drinking my damn profits. So
yep. They so I got in with the fire department, and once I got on with the fire department, I left the reserves. I was like, just put me back in the IRR. This sucks. And so I got into the fire department and ended up going to paramedic school, and I did almost 11 years in the fire department. And then I had um one day I was getting ready to play a hockey game. I was really big into beer league hockey at that point.
Mhm.
And I was down on the ice stretching. I played goalie, and I was in front of the net stretching, getting ready. Felt completely fine. And as soon as I stood up, it felt like somebody hit me in the back of the head with an axe. I mean, I thought I was having a stroke or something. I mean, I was not okay. And so I ended up going to the emergency room, and they ran a bajillion tests and everything, and they didn't find anything wrong. And but long story short, I had a migraine from that day in October 2013 up until 2020.
Wow.
Basically, here in Colorado, I finally met somebody who could help me, and then they actually got my migraines to pretty much go away. I had, like I said, I had a solid 10 out of 10 headache for almost a decade, but now I have a headache. Every few days I'll get a pretty good headache, but it's generally gone. And what they determined was that I had basically lockjaw, because I was carrying so much stress and everything from trauma with being a paramedic on the streets,
Hmm.
that I had basically pushed my own jaw up into my skull.
Wow.
And and you can still see it if you pay attention when I talk. The left side of my face doesn't really move like it should, and it's really obvious when I'm singing, I think. Of course, I'm hypersensitive about it now. Not that I care what anybody else sees, but I see it and I notice it, and I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
But so they've managed to straighten that out, and and now I'm in therapy and all that good stuff, and I'm making a lot of progress with that.
That's good.
And one of the things that happened while I was laid up was I realized, like I said, when I was in high school and stuff, I was pretty big into music. But once I joined the military, I kind of laid it down, and I want to do the responsible family, all that
Right.
good stuff,
Right.
and what I realized though was when I was laying on my back in bed, because anytime I got out of bed, my head would just increase but I could play my guitar laying flat on my back. And so I started picking up the guitar again and playing, and I realized that for some reason, and this is going to sound really strange, I'm sure, to people, and when I would sing, the vibrations in my head would make my headache feel better. And
Wow.
so I would sit there and literally, God bless my partner, because she would be in the house with me, but I would sit there and play guitar and sing, for 8-10 hours a day, just to be feeling better, that whole time.
Yeah.
And so, I got so into that. And one day on, I don't know if it was on Facebook or if I got an email or something, just randomly I come across this group that says, hey, if you're a veteran and you like music, and you'd like to meet Vince Gill, you should give us a ring. And I was like, well,
Yes,
fuck
yes, and
yeah.
yes.
Right. All of those things apply to me. And so it was this group, Soldier Songs and Voices. And they were like, what we do is we take veterans and we teach them to write their own songs, to tell their own stories. And so we hook them up with professional songwriters to give you, insight in the process so that you can tell your own story as therapy for yourself to improve your headspace, and at the time I thought it all sounded kind of like, yeah, I mean, I get it. I feel better when I'm playing music, but that, I don't know how
Right.
therapeutic it really is for everything else. But so, and this was during COVID. So I did, the Zoom meeting thing and got to talk to Vince Gill on Zoom, which was freaking awesome.
Hell yeah.
And super, super nice guy, by the way. I mean, just super nice guy. And so the next year they were like, well, COVID's been lifted, so we're going to do it in person. And they have this retreat every year in November called Reveille Retreat, which is where they take people from around the country to down to this ranch in Hallettsville, Texas. Which, little side note here, Hallettsville is about 20 minutes from Yoakum. So
Okay.
it was like literally going home to this
Complete circle.
right. And that was really interesting for me. But so I went down there, and quite frankly, I mean, it changed my life. I started writing songs. I mean, I had been kind of fiddling with writing songs, but they were not,
Mhm.
they weren't anything all that great, and they certainly weren't deep and meaningful and therapeutic to myself, kind of things.
Right.
And I got down there and got to team up with some, magnificent professional songwriters and learn the process, and got a little better on the guitar and all that good stuff. And it just it touched me so much that when I got back here to Denver, I was like, I need to help other people with this stuff. And so I teamed up with another guy here in the area named Tony Rosario, who is like our professional songwriter mentor for our chapter here in Denver, and John Evans, who I mentioned before, who is an Operation Encore artist. And
Mhm.
we've started a chapter of Soldier Songs and Voices right here in Denver.
Hell yeah.
Uh, and we've gotten into VFW post number 1 now, which is the very first VFW in the country, which is super awesome. I mean, they've got
That
an
is.
old flag behind the bar that's like, I think it's got 40 stars on it or something. That's how long ago it was founded. Yeah, but it's actually an art gallery now. So the whole deal is that it's down in the art district of Denver, and it's an art gallery. All the walls are covered with veterans and family of veterans art,
Wow.
like pictures and paintings and stuff, right? And so they wanted to expand into the music world, and so we've kind of occupied that space for them to be the music program there at VFW Post 1.
That is
And
awesome.
it is really amazing. And like we mentioned before, that I don't actually qualify for VFW membership, but they have a Veterans Arts Council that does all the art stuff, and so that's so I'm involved in that's how my in is and fits in with the VFW. But now John is actually a member of Post 1,
Okay.
so we're doing well there, and we're actually holding a on September 11th. We're going to have a little mini concert that hopefully we're going to be live streaming to just basically kind of show what we do, and show some of the guys that have been there, let them play some of their songs out and have like a little mini concert, and maybe hopefully get some of the public in to kind of see. And
Yeah,
And
man.
yeah, and that's awesome. And you know, while they're there checking us out, you know, they all the veteran art is on the walls, and it's
Yeah.
just such a cool space, man. It is really such a cool space. And I couldn't be more thrilled to be in there. I mean, if you can't tell, I mean,
Yeah. No.
it's awesome. Because when we
You know,
started the meetings, we were just meeting right here in my basement, you know, and we had 4 or 5 guys come in and hang out in the basement, and that's fun. But you know, it's a different kind of thing. It's um yeah, it's just a different kind of thing to be in a more central location down in Denver, B, a like dedicated artistic space. I mean, I've got
yeah.
a pretty artistic basement, as you can see the paintings and stuff in here.
Yeah.
That's all my partner, by the way. I don't paint, but it's such a cool space down there. It really is, and I encourage anybody who is in the Denver area to, you know, come and hang out with us. We're there every Monday night, 7 o'clock. So it's and we're always looking for more people to touch, you know, and get in touch with.
And I bet you there's a ton of history down there too.
Oh man, and you know, they've got a little museum room with like old guns and documents and pictures and stuff
Yeah.
of, you know, deployments of, you know, World War I, World War II kind of stuff. And it is neat to see. It is really neat to see.
Yeah.
It's
Oh,
a
I
great
bet, man.
space. Yeah, so
I'd love to swing by sometime.
absolutely, we'd love to have you. Love to have you. Maybe we can get you in the whole um live stream thing so you can see what we're doing too.
Oh,
But
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I'll definitely attend, man.
yeah, that would be
What day
cool.
did you say it was?
It's going to be September 11th, Monday, September 11th this year. So,
Okay. Awesome. Yeah. I'll be just getting back from Hero Stock. So,
oh man, I wish I had heard about that sooner because I would be there. But my September is completely booked between that, and that's another thing I was about to mention is we've also gotten involved with. There's a nonprofit in the area that they do. It's a like a drama organization, like community theater,
mhm.
but they do all. It's a peace motivated kind of thing, so they do plays and functions that you know, promote peace and understanding and not war. But
Right.
there's a lot of people that are involved in that are like refugees from wars, and you know, we've got people from Afghanistan, from India, which I didn't realize the whole India Pakistan thing is as hot as it is. You know,
Yeah.
that's a huge deal going on right now, and we don't ever hear about it over here, you know.
No. Yeah.
Um,
India is not super popular over in their area where they're at.
yeah. And the lady that runs the thing is she's an Indian. I don't want to really say refugee because she moved here, you know, because she wanted to. It wasn't like
Right.
she had to run away, but she moved here and started this organization. So it's really cool. So we're doing a every weekend basically in September. We're doing a little mini show with them where we're going to go in and play a few songs, and then they're going to you know, do their thing. And then at the end of the month, they're doing a production of Henry V, and it's a modern adaptation of it.
Okay.
And is it Henry V, Richard III? I don't remember. It's the famous play, Shakespeare play, where they have the, you know, the Band of Brothers speech, where, you know,
I think it is Henry V.
I think so too.
Yeah.
I'm drawing a blank at the moment though, but yeah, so it's a modern interpretation of that, and we're gonna kind of go in and do um just some music with that too, with the show. And so that's a big commitment right now that we're dealing with, and getting that ready to go. And it's so yeah, September is completely booked for me, or I would love to be at Hero Stock. And we
Yeah.
actually I actually talked to Jason Steiner this morning from Hero Stock, and hopefully you know, Soldier Songs and them are gonna team up next year for
Hell
some
yeah.
stuff. And yeah, they've got another organization, Guitars for Vets, is going to be at Hero Stock, and
Yep.
we've joined up with them here. The local chapter here, they meet at an American Legion that's not too far from the VFW where we meet, and they, you know, for those people that don't know, Guitars for Vets, what they do is they take veterans and they give them 12 weeks of lessons for how to play the guitar, and then once they complete that 12 weeks, they give them a guitar.
Yeah.
And so our goal right now is to work with them so that, once veteran graduates from Guitars for Vets, they can come over to us and we can teach them to write songs with what they
Yeah.
know, and help them improve their musicianship and everything on top of that. And because, I kind of touched on it before, but the fact is that it's amazing, because the first thing to do to write a good song is you have to be honest. And to be
Yeah.
honest, you have to really look inside yourself. And, if you're going to tell your own story, you really have to face some shit,
That is
about
true.
what is my story? Who
Yep.
am I? What have I done? What is important to me? And what is the shit in my head that I have to get out, you know? And that's really the beauty of songwriting, is once you get that stuff out of your head, it's just like a giant weight being lifted off, and
Yep.
the first time you do it and you kind of put it out there and you kind of think, oh, I really shouldn't have said that. People are going to think I'm fucking psycho or something now. And but then as
What's
soon as
going
you
on,
do
brother?
it, oh, hey, what's up? Uh, as soon as you do it though, it's just freeing, and it's, and the acceptance of other people, and that's the thing about a group of veterans all doing the same thing,
Yeah.
is I'm not going to say anything that's any more fucked up than anybody else in the room, and
Yep.
everybody just accepts that that's the way it is, that we all carry some messed up shit in our head. and
Absolutely,
uh
man.
and but getting it out is absolutely essential, whether that's in, talk therapy, EMDR, whatever you're doing to get that stuff out of you is is a necessary thing, or
Yeah.
else you're just going to be stuck in that cycle forever of carrying that stuff and carrying the shame and the guilt and all that crap.
That's where podcasting has came in for me, man. You
Yeah.
know, I didn't enjoy therapy at all.
Hmm.
And I have probably opened up more since I started this podcast and talking with veterans and everything else. And the other thing I noticed too is um, writing a book. I'm in the middle of one now.
Oh, cool.
Man, it really helps. You know, when you put things on paper and you then have to go back and proofread and reread it, and it's now like you're reading somebody else's story.
Hmm.
It makes you see things from a different perspective. It makes you start evaluating those moments, you know. And
Absolutely.
I tell people all the time, man, I don't care if it's your dog, nobody, you're just talking to yourself. It doesn't matter. Write it on a piece of paper, a book, but just get it out. You know,
Hmm.
you don't have to be on the couch with the VA person looking at their watch ready to go home. You know, that's something that you can do yourself and get used to hearing it and the feelings that are all and the emotions that are going to come with it.
Yeah,
So,
and just like you said, it kind of gives you a different perspective, because I know everybody's different and everybody's story is different, but for me, there's a lot of things I look back at, and you look at it from the filter of, the perspective of the person that was inside it, and you look at all the things you could have done differently, could have done better, where
yeah,
this mistake was, where that mistake was, and but once you kind of put that out there on paper, like you said, and then you can kind of pull back and look at it objectively,
yep.
without, I mean, I'm not going to say it's without emotion or without that
Oh
feeling,
no,
but
that will be there.
that's still there. But it kind of gives you that distance to look at
Yep.
it in an objective way and go, well, yeah, okay, maybe I could have done that differently, but how the fuck was I going to know that at that time?
All
And
right.
and maybe this could have gone different. And so it which is another big thing is, you got to be kind to yourself in some ways. I mean, you absolutely have to be kind to yourself. And
Yep.
looking back at that through an objective lens, whatever that is a good way to start being kind to yourself and start,
Yep.
you know, forgiving yourself for all the little things that you think you should have done better, whether that's actually true or not.
Yep. You know,
And
my favorite saying is, "It is what it is." You know,
absolutely.
and until you can learn to let shit go that you can't control and you can't change, there's no
Hmm.
sense in putting your mind, your mental health, and everything else in that stress of just carrying it around,
Right.
because that's where it builds up. You know, at some point you have to be able to say, "It is what it is."
Hmm.
You know, And
You know,
it's important.
I've looked at a lot of like Buddhist philosophy and stuff too to kind of deal with stuff. And, you know, they have a great philosophy that if you spend too much time in the past, it robs you of, you can't change the past, and that will rob you of your future. If you spend too
Absolutely.
much time looking at your future, it robs you of today. The only thing you have control of is today.
You're
So
right.
you can't change the past, you can't change the future. All you can do is do what you can do today. And that's, if you can kind of simplify it down to moment, you know, um, just try to do the best you can today, man. I mean, that's all it is, or the whole idea that, because I know me personally, I dealt with a lot of anger and stuff, you know,
Yep.
and that self-hatred and anger and all that crap, and they say too that holding on to anger is like holding on to a hot coal. All you're doing is
Yep.
hurting yourself. You
Yep.
can't.
We just had this conversation on Tuesday. I do a motivational podcast with Sugar Rose,
Hmm.
and we talked about that. Why is it that so many veterans, that's the one probably symptom of PTSD that seems to run pretty consistent with veterans is the emotion that they choose to use and deal with is anger,
Hmm.
and like I said in that show, that reason is because that's the emotion that the military teaches you to use to deal with it. That's your tool to be able to understand, or not really understand, but be able to deal with the things that you're going to see.
Hmm.
And that anger is what fires you, keeps you going, keeps you pushing. And when you come back, that's now the only tool you got for your mental health is if something's challenging, I have to deal with it in anger. That's
Right.
the emotion you
Destroy it.
feel.
That's it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's tough to take, especially somebody who's been in 20 years, to take that mindset out of you and say, no, it's
Hmm.
okay to cry, it's okay to feel remorse, it's okay to just know you're not okay today,
Right.
whether you understand why or not. It's hard to tear down all that training that you had in you
Yeah.
you know
Well, and because it becomes a self-protection
yeah,
mechanism, right? But once you turn that anger on yourself, then you've got this kind of paradox where, the only tool you have is anger and, try to destroy the problem. But when you realize that all that is directed at you,
yep,
it just, and that's why I'm not a mental health professional, so I don't want to say I know this, but my opinion is that is why so many people end up,
yeah.
joining the 22, because it's just
Well, they don't understand that the tools you were given now is working against you. you
right,
know you're now
right.
trying to fix a car with a rubber band instead of a wrench.
Hmm.
And at that point, when you if you don't get to that point where you realize that you're using the wrong tools, or somebody doesn't show you the correct tools to use, which is your emotions, um yeah, it becomes hopeless.
Yeah.
you know
And you brought up the VA, and I had such bad experience with the VA 20 years ago that I haven't been back to the VA until very, very recently.
yeah.
And the only reason I went back to the VA at all is because John Evans actually works with the VA, and he got me involved in one of these support groups for chronic pain people,
Hmm.
chronic pain veterans, and and so that got me involved. But that's not the mainstream VA kind of thing.
Right.
Because they were like, well, you have to be enrolled in the VA here in Eastern Colorado to get into this group. And I was like, okay, so I went down and enrolled. And it's funny. I mean, everybody knows the story that so I was like, okay, so when do I need an appointment with a PCP, obviously, to get into the system. And so I was blown away. They scheduled me right away. And I was like, and it was only like 2 weeks away for the
Wow.
appointment. And I was like, wow, okay, so maybe the VA really has changed. And of course, the day before the appointment, they called and was like, oh, we're so sorry, but we have to reschedule that. And I was like, okay, well, so we picked another date, and this one was further away. And this time, about a week before, they called and they were like, "Yeah, we need to reschedule that." And I was like, "Okay." So rescheduled again. Next time, they didn't even bother to call. They just sent me a letter and said we need to reschedule it. And so I was just like, you know what? Yeah, I get it. I was like, okay, I've done what I had to do. I'm enrolled in the system up here now, but fuck them. You know, I mean,
Yeah.
I've been getting my care outside the VA for, a long time at this point. And I'm lucky, quite frankly, I'm lucky enough to be able to do that because of when I got out of the fire department, they actually retired me and gave me a disability pension
That's
from the
awesome.
fire department. So I still have insurance coverage and stuff through that. Of course, I pay for it, but
Right.
it's better than dealing with the VA any day, in my
Right.
opinion. I know what doctor I'm going to see. I know that if they're canceling, it's actually because of something other than, dumbass booking or whatever the
Yeah.
problem happens to be with the VA that day. And
That
and
contract
honest,
didn't show up.
right. Well, and honestly, when I went, we're speaking truths about mental health here, and when I got out of the Marine Corps and went into the VA to see, um, you know, a mental health specialist, and their answer was, here, take this drug, and next
Yep.
time you come back, we'll see how it's doing. And of course, you don't come back for 6 months,
Yep.
and then by then you're like, yeah, this hasn't worked at all.
You haven't
And
given it enough time.
right. Exactly. And then, and oh, well, now we'll change to a different drug after you've been on that one for a year and that didn't work. So
Yep.
we'll do this one for a year and see how that goes. And I was like, man,
And
y'all aren't doing nothing for
they
me.
start everybody the same way. Trazodone. Here's your trazodone. Take your trazodone. Yep. It's the
And then we're
same
moving to,
cocktail for everybody.
yep. I went through, anyway, everybody knows how terrible the VA is at some
Yeah.
things. And, but, my grandfather, he always was at the VA, and he always got really good care down there in Houston, which I thought was interesting. And maybe it's an age thing, or maybe it was because he was always there for physical issues that they could see and fix, kind of thing. Of course, they did actually. The man died at like 85 years old, something like that, and was in a VA home for the last 2 years or so, but he had dementia. And they they finally, like a month before he died, they approved him for PTSD. They diagnosed him with PTSD because he'd been blown to shit in 1944.
Yeah.
Nah.
Wow.
It's like, wow, gee, thanks, that was helpful.
Yeah. Yep. It's funny. So my dad, who was actually my grandpa, I was adopted. He had a heart attack, and the VA actually sent him to the Houston VA for the surgery, for the bypass surgery. And I have to admit, but I was young. I was 15, 16 is what I had to be. So I didn't really know the difference between good care and bad care anyways. But he ended up having a stroke on the table when they were doing the surgery, and they just basically came in. They brought him out of the surgery and they said, look, here's your choices. The arteries that go to your brain is clogged as well. And the only thing we can guarantee is you're going to have a stroke. We don't know what's going to happen after that. You could die, could be one finger, who knows, or you can live day by day. So, my dad lived day by day, and he passed away 6 months later. But yeah, I do remember the doctor that was down there, and he was a really good guy. He was young. He wasn't a military guy. He was just coming out of school and whatnot. But yeah, I do remember I was like, man, I know something about the Houston VA, and it's a huge place.
Yeah, it absolutely is. It's very big. And that's just it, how compartmentalized the VA has become is interesting too. But like I said, my granddad got good care once you're in like inpatient VA kind of thing.
Yeah.
They did open heart surgery on him and all kinds of crazy stuff, and he always had a pretty good outcome. but I've also seen, as a paramedic, taking veterans to the VA hospital because they're having an acute problem,
Right.
and just seeing the horrible, horrible care they get in the emergency room. It's just like, oh,
Yep.
you're having a stroke? Cool. Well, here's a room over here. We'll get to you in a few hours, or
Yep.
I literally, um, well, I'm not going to tell that story, but they, I've seen them do things that were downright criminal,
Yeah.
absolutely downright criminal in the VA ER there in Houston. And it's yeah, so it's always a crapshoot. It's kind of like when you go in to get your disability approved or whatever. It just depends
Yeah.
on who's there that day and what kind of mood they're in.
Yep. Yeah.
It's,
You
it's
you are
just
absolutely
amazing.
right. So I know you started playing the music when you were going through these symptoms before they got you taken care of. Did you ever
Mhm.
get to the point where you were trying to gig or go to
That's
any
basically
like
where I am
open
now.
mic? Is it okay?
Yeah, that's basically where I am now. Um right before COVID hit, I tried to go to one open mic, or I went to an open mic, and it was I wasn't physically ready, to be completely honest. And but once COVID's kind of been lifted, I've been getting out as much as I can. And I'm actually I've played a few gigs here and there. I actually played a gig this last weekend um at a brewery, which is a good thing about Colorado, is on every corner there's a brewery, and most of them will, uh have live music in there sometimes. Uh,
Yeah.
but yeah, so and our guy Tony Rosario, like I said, he's our professional musician, professional songwriter, mentor for us here in Denver. He gigs all the time, and he hosts open mics. And so now I
Okay.
basically only go to his open mics and hang out and jam with him. And there's a you know little group of us that kind of go follow him around to that. And that's another thing that we do at Soldier Songs. That's not really our explicit mission, to try to give people um an avenue into becoming a gigging musician if they want to.
Right.
But there's enough of us that are doing it, that are trying that road, that we're trying to anybody else that wants to, trying to
Yeah.
to spread that knowledge and give them, and which, I'm still um I have a whole lot to learn still. I'll just say that.
Oh,
Um,
yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure, everybody does. I don't care who you are. This
mhm.
industry is always changing. You know, who would have ever thought COVID? And look at
Right?
how many artists had to pivot and learn how to do things differently. Because doing it virtually, it becomes much harder now to reach your audience and actually get them to feel what you're feeling, because it's more like they're watching TV. So
Right.
you know this industry is, if you think you've got it mastered, man, I don't think so. You might want to reevaluate things.
Right. Well, and additionally, and I don't want to sound like I'm just whining here, but the days of, you know, being able to play your guitar and sing and perform was really the only skill you needed. Yeah, those are long gone.
Absolutely.
I mean, you have to be a, content creator now. You have to be a social media whiz, and I'm
A
trying to
businessman, a business person.
run all the business. Exactly. Do all your
Yeah.
own booking, be familiar with all the platforms out there. Get on podcast and stuff, and because radio that's a dead medium,
It
honestly. I
is.
mean,
Yeah.
and even things like, the whole idea of signing with a record label, and you've made it, that doesn't even, that's not
Nope.
even there anymore. Record labels are obsolete. I mean, a lot of
Nope.
people don't realize it yet, but record labels are obsolete.
Yeah.
And so there's just so much you have to learn to be able to do, and then, like, well, okay, well, how do I write a contract? How do I get other musicians to play with me? I don't want to have a band. I just want to have this guy come in and play on my record. How does that
Yep.
work? How do I get into, how do I get royalties from, streaming? How do I get royalties for, just how do I actually get paid, other than,
Yep.
showing up at the bar and getting the bar owner to give me money out of the till? There's
Yep.
there's a million different little things, and like we were talking about off camera, I'm trying to record so that I have things to put out to get royalties and to get bookings and all these things. Because it's hard to convince somebody to give you a show if they can't see hear what you're going to be doing.
Right. Your
And
Facebook page becomes your resume.
absolutely. And so you have to have that content out there. Well, you can either pay somebody to help you create it, which my pension ain't that good. So,
Yep.
um, or you can figure out how to do it yourself. And so I'm trying to figure out how to do it myself. And that's,
Yep.
and so I feel like I'm constantly trying to juggle, but I'm dropping every ball but one at a time. And then I get halfway through figuring out what to do with this one. I go, oh, but what about this one on the floor? I got to pick it back up too. And
Yep.
God,
It's
it's
2 steps
just
forward, 1 back.
absolutely.
And that's all you can do is not get discouraged. And I had an artist say one time on my show, when you get told no, don't take it personal.
Right.
Actually, I think it was a comedian that said it, but it's not personal. They're not saying no to you. They don't hate you. They just
Right.
didn't like your comedy, your entertainment, your
product.
audition. Yeah. So you can either keep going till you find the person that does like it, or you can go back and reevaluate it and change it. But just getting mad and giving up because somebody told you no is not the answer,
Right. And that's the hard part to remember, is that it is a product,
It is.
because especially like with writing a song that, comes from your inner soul, basically, and then you put that child you've created basically out there for someone else to evaluate, and they go, no, that sucks.
Yeah.
I mean, that really feels like oh my God, they
It
hate
feels
me,
personal.
It
Yep.
feels very personal, but you just have to remember, no, it's the product that you're putting out there,
Yep.
Is Jack Blaise music something that people are actually going to enjoy, or is this just you, mentally masturbating for yourself, kind of thing? And which there's
how many people on American Idol are there because their mom said, "Man, you're a great singer." Nobody had the heart to say, "No, you're not."
right. And that, and that's yet another thing, are shows like that worth doing? A fireman buddy of mine, his daughter was on The Voice a couple years ago. Sarah Grace, by the way, if y'all want to look her up, she's awesome, great voice. But and so it was really interesting to see what came out of it for her, because she didn't win, but she went pretty far, and she made some connections, but when I look, I don't see like a whole lot of movement in her career from it, and you see a lot of those guys, or people that you look around and like in the Denver area, they're like former Voice contestant, former American Idol contestant, or whatever, and they're playing the same gig I am, and it's it's an eye opener to realize that, just like figuring out what medium, what social media platform works best for you, because, my audience isn't on TikTok. My audience is all Gen X guys, or Gen X people. So we're on Facebook.
Yep.
So am I going to spend time on Facebook, or going to spend time marketing on TikTok? Well, and so you have to be able to decipher that and figure out the best way to go. And it's just like, I'm 50 years old. They wouldn't have me on any of those shows because I'm too old. But it wouldn't make sense for me to try to do that. And so you have to understand, you have to understand your niche in the market, and that's part of like looking back at, am I a product that people will be interested in, or am I just out here pleasing myself? And and you have to find the right mix, because clearly, if you're not pleasing yourself, and if you're not writing authentic songs and doing authentic performances, the product is not going to be good, right? But if
I think it's also important that while you're preparing that product, you're taking the time to understand exactly how algorithms and everything work with social media, right? So once you have a page that's been active long enough that you can kind of gauge your followers on when they're more active on that social media, well, now you have a sample size. So now you can start playing videos and putting them on there and testing your product. This would be like your Kickstarter, seeing if people like it, judging by the likes and the follows and stuff like that. You know what I mean? And I think that takes time because, people think social media, I just post and whoever sees it, sees it. Woohoo,
Right.
but they don't understand that, the way the algorithms work, you've got to, you can either play against them or you can play with them,
Right. And that's I am very much behind the curve on that. I'm still trying to figure that out. And that's another thing though worth mentioning is that as soon as you figure out Facebook marketing or whatever it is, then they go in and they change it.
Yep.
You know? And so
Yep.
then you have to learn all about the new changes and what it means for you. And it's just yeah,
Yeah.
you know, biggest takeaway is this definitely you have to be adaptable, you have to be flexible, and you have to be willing to learn and willing to work your butt off,
Yep.
and that's the truth of it.
Look, at the end of
Um,
the day, nobody's gonna believe in your product more than yourself,
right, right.
So
And that's the way it has to be.
yeah.
You have to believe in it yourself because it and that's something I try to look back at every song that I write and everything is just like you said, you put it on the paper and you try to look at it objectively. It I have to look at it and go, okay, would I like this song? Would I turn the radio off if this came on, or would I turn it up, or
Right.
would I not even notice it?
Yeah. Yeah.
And again, that's a hard part because that's really being honest with yourself about the quality of the stuff you're putting out. Because
Yeah.
it's really hard to evaluate for yourself because all the meanings and all the emotion and everything that you've put into this song. And
Yep.
so when you hear it back, you hear all that stuff that you've put in there, even
Yep.
though the next person may not.
Right. Well, did you say you had a couple songs that you might play for
Yeah,
us?
sure. We can do a couple songs.
Yeah, man. Let's hear it.
Oh. Can you hear that? Can you hear the guitar? Oh, I suddenly can't hear you at all.
There you go. Yeah,
Oh.
I can barely hear it. It's very faint, but I can hear it.
Hmm. All right, well, I'm gonna play the first song I wrote. No, not the first one. I'm gonna play the song that I wrote at the last Reveille retreat down in Hallettsville. So this is called Phoenix. Was destroyed, beaten down. Demons came, they dragged me down. Fire burned all around. My own screams, the only sound. Hellfire burned my soul away. The devil laughed, my skin was flayed. He knew not what I was worth. Fires of hell brought my rebirth. So I explode in a fit of flight. Towards the sun, I burst into flight. Now watch me fly on wings of fire. Watch the flames take me higher. Ashes to ashes, to my surprise. I am the phoenix. Watch me rise. Purged by fire, cleanse the sin. Knock me down, I fly again. Yeah, now there's no disguising. See me soar, I am the phoenix rising. Now I can't even see what I used to be. Flying free from the past. Yes, I'm free, free at last. So watch me fly on wings of fire. Watch the flames take me higher. Ashes to ashes, to my surprise. I am the phoenix. Watch me rise. You watch me fly, wings of fire. Watch the flames take me higher. She's to ashes to my surprise. I am the phoenix, watch me rise. I am the phoenix, watch me rise.
Man, all right.
So,
We need to
yeah,
we need to get this on Gunroom Radio, man.
right. I'm telling you, that's the one that I have. It's mostly recorded and about halfway edited. So that's gonna be my first one I put out.
Dude, I love it, man.
Thank you, thank you.
That is a very inspirational song, man.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I mean, it's all about, my journey is, trying to claw my way back from
Yeah.
being laid up, and that's and now I'm ready to at least fight the world for again. I may not
Yeah.
conquer it, but I'm here for the fight.
Yeah. I mean, that's what it's about, man. It's, it's not about how hard you got hit and got knocked down. It's, how many times you got back up. So,
Right. Yeah.
absolutely, man.
You want me to play a couple more? Or?
Yeah, man. Go ahead and give us one more, and we'll get into how people can find you and all that good stuff, man.
Sure thing. Yeah, I'm gonna play. This is actually, I wrote this pre SSV days, but this is the first song I ever wrote that I was really proud of. And it kind of shows the other side of what I do. That I call my style Muddy Moonshine Americana, because it's very, very rooted in country, but it's not just country. And especially nowadays, I mean, you say country and people think,
George Jones.
no, people think like Jason Aldean and
yeah.
This hip hop tractor rap shit that I mean, that's not what I do, man. It's not what I do. Yeah, so this one hopefully will make you think a little George Jones or Christofferson or something like that. This is called Bottle on the Floor.
Okay.
My eyes blink slowly open. I look around, think it might be morning or maybe afternoon. I look out my window. The sun is starting to set. Another day wasted without an ounce of regret. And the ashtray is overflowing. My head is awful sore. Today is just another, just like the day before. I don't remember coming home, but my key's still in the door. My soul is just as empty as that bottle on the floor. With his boxes in a corner and a leaning crooked stack. They're just reminders that you ain't coming back. There's cobwebs in my pantry, but there's not much more, 'cause my world's as empty as that bottle on the floor. Yeah, the ashtray's overflowing. My whole body is sore. Today is just another, just like the day before. I don't remember how I got home, but my king is still in the door. My soul is just as empty as that bottle on the floor. Yeah, my world's as empty as that bottle on the floor.
Man, you know, I think you're going to get a lot of people that can recognize how they feel with that song. You know, um, just listening to the lyrics, man, I was thinking back to some of my pre getting help days, and
Yeah,
man, it's like you were just telling a story that I was like, yeah, that was me. Yeah, I was that guy.
yeah,
You know, and now I still drink, but I drink because I want to, and I'll
hmm
have maybe what I would have a day, I might have a week now, and so I've gotten better and things are better, but when you hear a song like that, man, it reminds you of those trials, those days where you were in a dark place and you didn't even realize where you were at or what was going on with you,
and you didn't even really care. 'Cause you're like,
No.
yeah, I know it sucks here, but fuck it, you know.
Yep.
And that's,
Yep.
I wrote that thinking back to the, right after the time of my second divorce, where,
That would make sense.
I was living in an apartment and I really didn't have any furniture. I didn't have shit in the apartment, but
Yeah.
there was a bar in the same building, and that's where I was every night, or I was at the house just drinking, by
Yep.
myself in an empty room. And you kind of realize afterwards, like, how I mean, if that's not a cry for help, I mean, what is?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
yeah,
And it's tough because, if somebody outside wants to get you help, well, you're not going to want to take it, you know,
right,
because the first thing they want to do is remove the alcohol. And you're like,
right,
oh, that's the last thing we're going to do.
right.
You
This is
know?
the only thing I've got right now,
Yep. So
Yeah,
yeah, man, I can relate. Well, brother, go ahead and tell everybody, one, how they can get with Soldier Songs and Voices, and two, tell them, I know you got a podcast too, man. Go and tell everybody a little bit
sure.
about that as well.
Yeah, so Soldier Songs and Voices, you can find us at soldiersongsandvoices.com. That's the national chapter's website. And then if you scroll down that, you'll see the various chapters listed, and we have a link on there to our Facebook page. And Soldier Songs Forces Denver has a Facebook page. We're also on a VFW Post One's page. You can find me at jackblaisemusic.com, or I'm also on Facebook as Jack Blaise Music. Um, what else was I saying? Oh, and yeah, you can also email me at jackblaisemusic.gmail.com, and that can be either for myself or for Soldier Songs. Um, and I'm off every Tuesday night. I'm out at the Berkeley Inn playing with Tony Rosario's open mic. Most
Oh yeah.
Wednesday nights, I'm down at the Fainting Goat in downtown Denver, um, playing down there with Tony. And I'm around town sometimes also. But what else did you want to know? What else do you want me to say?
Your podcast.
Oh, yeah. And so I'm on MBR, the morning show with Military Broadcast Radio with the H Train, Joel Hunt. We have a show every Friday morning from 8 to 10 Mountain Time, so 10 to noon Eastern Time. Uh, 11 to 1 Central Time. Y'all can do the math on that probably better than me at this point. But yeah, and we kind of talk about veterans issues, and we really, our main mission on that podcast is to try to connect nonprofits together, and with to get their messages out to the veterans out there that follow us. Like today we had Jason from Hero Stock. We also had Military Mike on, who is a VSO with the VA, and he was answering questions about the PACT Act. So we try to get veterans issues out there, and we're also trying to now that I've kind of taken over the show direction a little bit, I'm wanting to move it to more to like what y'all do with the veteran artist, get some musicians on there. We're starting to play some more music on there. Every day we do a tribute to the troops. Folks that have gone on ahead. So yeah, and I have to say, I never thought I would be a podcaster, but it's like you said, it's very therapeutic. You find yourself,
Yeah. And
and
it's
it's kind of
a lot of work too.
right, and it's kind of different than like when you're performing live on a stage. What you're really trying to do is connect with the audience, right, in any kind of way you can. And while you still want to have that, you still want to connect with your audience as a podcaster, there's a big gap between you and your audience. And so it often, as you well know, I'm sure, you often just kind of feel like you're just talking to yourself and screaming into the void kind of thing.
Yep.
And then you look up and you realize somebody's listening, and you're like, oh, cool.
Yep.
So it's a different kind of thing. And I'm enjoying it,
Yeah. It's like that when we're DJing on the radio station too, man. You'll be feeling like you're talking to yourself, and you're like, I ain't got to be proper. Ain't nobody listening anyways. And then all of a sudden, 5 people will be there. You're like, oh, well, you're listening to Gun Room Radio.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
One more thing. I will have some stuff recorded eventually here, hopefully in the next month or so, that will be on iTunes and all that. But
awesome, man.
I've been saying that for at least a year at this point. So
well, the only requirement to have your music on our radio station is that you're either a veteran or a dependent of a veteran. So there's no genre restrictions. There's no how many years you've been doing it restrictions.
Yeah.
We're not targeting people like George Strait and people that have already made it. So
right.
Sorry, George, if you're listening to the show and you're upset because you can't be on Gun Room Radio. This is for the guys trying to get there.
Right. I always forget that George Strait was a veteran. I think of Sturgill and Johnny Cash, and there's Chris Christopherson is like, in my opinion, like greatest dude that ever lived.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah. There's a long list, but you have to go back. There's a few in the 90s and 2000s genre that of music that served, but when you start really looking back, you got to go to the Vietnam era and further back.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. You are absolutely right. Well, brother, I will make sure that I add all these links and everything before I upload this to Spotify. If you want a copy of anything, or you want to use it, by all means, brother, it is there for you to use.
Well, I appreciate that, and hopefully this won't be the last time we chat. And
no, man, you're going to be at Hero Stock next year. You said I'm going to hold you to it.
Absolutely, I'll see you there.
I'm picking up the guitar too. My guitar comes Monday, and my first lessons will hopefully be after that. So maybe by 2024, I might jam with you.
Awesome. Well, you don't have to be not to be insulting or anything, but you don't have to be any good to jam with me. I'm not all that good myself, so we'll figure something out. What guitar are you getting?
I don't know. Believe it or not, a guy named Joel, he was on my podcast, and I would allow him to teach me how to play guitar. I said, well, I guess first you have to have a guitar, I said, I've been wanting to do it. And I thought about going through Guitars for Vets. I said, but I said, right now, with just kicking off the radio station, My money's kind of tight trying to support that and build the 501c and plus personal bills and all that stuff. I said, let's wait a little bit until that settles down. Well, he got tired of waiting because he sent me a picture. He said, I got a guitar for you if you want it. And I was like, man, all right, well, how much? And he's like, man, you help veterans. I'll mail it to you Friday.
That's awesome.
I was like, are you serious?
Yeah.
Man.
And I'm just going to interject real quick here because I got to plug this because I don't think I mentioned it earlier. But in addition to songwriting, we also provide veterans with free instruments. So
awesome.
If I had known that you were in that space, I would have gotten you something. But yeah, Soldier Songs of Voices also. If you need an instrument and want to learn to play, give us a holler. That's what we do also.
Man, that is awesome. And that's what I love. There's a lot of 501c's out there that, are not just there to treat PTSD, but to give you skills and something that you're going to take with you after you're healing. These people playing music, once they're healing, they're not going to just put the guitar in the corner and say, oh, don't got to take my meds no more. I'm good. That's going to be a lifetime of things that they're going to be able to share with friends and family and everything. So,
well, and if they're anything like me, it's gone from, this helps me feel better to this is therapeutic to this is something I literally have to do every day.
Yeah.
And if I'm not doing it, I will be a miserable person, and, it's changed everything for me, even from, when I swore that when I got better, I'd get me a good desk job, doing engineering or something, low stress. But I mean, music just literally reached in and grabbed a hold of my soul and said, nope, this is mine now, and so that's and kind of going back to your sergeant's words there, be careful what you wish for sometimes. But I have to say there's really not much downside to music. Not at all.
I agree, man. I was never a big music guy until, I got started this radio station and started talking with artists. And at that point now, I'm like you, man. If I'm not doing something either with podcasting or that radio station, I'm having a miserable day. You know? So I can relate, brother. Well, like I said, I'll get everything linked up and everything so people can easily find you. And we will, if anybody ever asks, I'll make sure I refer them over to you guys. And if you don't mind holding on, we'll throw our little exit out there and we'll chat a little bit after we go off the air.
Absolutely. I'll be here.
All right. You guys take care, man. Be safe. We will see y'all Tuesday with our next podcast. Y'all take care.